Chances are, if you are thinking of being a vegan or you've become a vegan, you think it's a fairly new phenomenon. You think that, in the last few years, people are jumping on the bandwagon. Rarely do you meet somebody that I would like to call a unicorn who's been doing this for a lot of years and who actually wrote a book nearly 20 years ago that was the most disruptive book of its kind, and it's still disruptive. And today it is my distinct pleasure to welcome Dr. Will Tuttle, who's the author of The World Peace Diet. I highly recommend that you get this book. I thought I knew a lot, and when I read his book, it was so much an awareness book, and one that I have to go through again and again and again. And it is with great pleasure that I am here talking with Dr. Will Tuttle today. So, Dr. Tuttle, great to have you here.
Are you ready to live the life you deserve? Do you want to feel vibrantly healthy and reach your optimal weight without dieting while being kind to animals and the planet? Then you're in the right place at the right time. Get ready to hear from doctors, nutritionists, experts, and everyday men and women committed to creating a powerful life in mind, body, and soul through ethical food choices. Welcome to Plant-Based Eating for Health with your host, certified plant-based nutritionist, Kathleen Gage.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Thanks everyone for watching.
Yeah, well, you wrote the version that I have is from 2005, and I know there's been a more recent version. And when you first wrote the book, that was back in the day that people didn't even know what a vegan was, and let alone, how to have world peace through what we eat. What was I know your wife basically said, if you're going to read the book, you've got to write it because you were looking for this kind of a book. And trust me, I've been stalking you for a while now. I've watched a lot of videos that you've done. I've read your book. I've read things online about you. And I find it really interesting that back nearly 20 years ago, you wrote a book that definitely was a disruptor. Tell us about how that came to be.
Yeah, well, actually, Kathleen, I started writing this book right around the turn of the millennium, right around the year 2000, I would say. And I wrote it because, as you were saying, I kept thinking, someone has got to write a book that will give the big picture about the consequences of animal agriculture, not just for our health. People wrote about that, and people have written some things about environmental problems and, of course, the suffering to animals. But I could see through my research, both the research I had done for my PhD at Berkeley, sociology, anthropology, education, history, public health, and so forth, psychology, social psychology. But also, I had spent a lot of time in meditation. I was a former Zen Buddhist monk, and I could feel there's way more to this than anyone's aware of. And so that was when, in the late 1990s, I'd already been a vegan since 1980, so I'd already been a vegan for almost 20 years at that point. And I really felt that someone has got to write a book that does this, that gives people the opportunity to see and to understand at a deeper level what the actual ramifications are of animal agriculture and how it's this vast mandala, really, of interconnected forces that reaches into every nook and cranny of our entire public and private lives. It's just it's everything. It's how we live. It's our government, our economics, our financial institutions, the religion, our healthcare system, the pharmaceutical industry, education, the family, our private lives, our spiritual paths. Nothing for me is off limits. I think we need to look everywhere, and everywhere you look, the amazing thing, I guess the main point is that everywhere you look, you see animal agriculture's thumbprint, right? It's affecting every institution and every aspect of our lives, and it's harmful. That's a really important thing. It's not just affecting all these different dimensions of our life, but it's very harmful. So I really felt like somebody's got to write a book that just puts it all out there, the whole thing, and then let the world deal with it however they want to do. And I didn't know if people would just ignore it or what would happen. Like you say, it's a very disruptive book because it goes into, there's nothing that's not examined. But the good news for me has been that a lot of people stepped forward to really champion this book in the English-speaking world and also in the rest of the world. And so it's been translated now by volunteers into actually about 20 languages. It's been
Wow.
published in about 17 of them, I think.
That's amazing.
So,
Well,
yeah.
I'll tell you, you've got another advocate on your side because actually, how I got the introduction to you was I have a Facebook group called Plant-Based Eating for Health, and I posted the book and I said, y'all have to get this. This is like the most amazing book. And it really is the first book that I've been able to find that talks about the energy of putting the animals into our body, the anger, the fear, the death. And I really was feeling alone with that conversation because people would look at me like, oh, here you go again. And it's like, no, there's truth to this. And then I found your book, it was literally, I've cried reading your book. I not only cried because it's like, I'm not alone, but I cried because of the sorrow that I feel the more I learn about the mistreatment of the animals, what it's doing to the earth, but the workers within factory farms, which I definitely want to get into that. But I posted the book in the Facebook group. And a client of mine actually said, well, I know Will. And I'm like, no, get out. And I said, please introduce me. And you were so gracious to say, yes, I would be happy to come on the show. And I do want to remind people that this is Kathleen Gage with Plant-Based Eating for Health. And I am talking with Dr. Will Tuttle, who is the author of The World Peace Diet. And it's Eating for Spiritual Health and Social Harmony. I encourage everybody, go right now and get a copy. We'll put the link below. And I can't emphasize that enough. Because that whole connection of everything is connected. And a lot of us, we think we're spiritual. And until we give up the animal and dairy, we don't know what that level of spirituality is about. So what have you found from when you first wrote the book to now? A lot of people during the pandemic, because of being locked in and really having to look at their habits, they've come to a vegan way of life or at least a plant-based. What have you noticed the difference between when you first wrote the book and it was first published to how people are embracing it now?
Yeah, well, that's true. You're right. It's a big change has happened, I would say, in the last 15 years since the World Peace Diet was first published in 2005, and I think it's been our society is going through massive changes, positive and negative, I would say, and a lot of the changes since 2005 have been negative in the sense that I think animal agriculture has continued to roll along, and the mentality of domination and exploitation of animals, of nature, of those with less privilege has continued, and in some ways accelerated. And done a lot of damage, and it's doing a lot of damage. But I think also, of course, there's been an awakening happening. People are beginning to question the official narratives in our society, especially around eating animal-based foods and wearing, things from animals and using animals, as just commodities. So it's been great to see this explosion of awareness. And Madeline and I. My wife, Madeline, and I have been, I think, very fortunate in a sense since I wrote the World Peace Diet, to be in somewhat a unique position since the World Peace Diet has been translated into all these languages the last 5 or 6 years. We did a lot of traveling to Africa, to Asia, to Eastern and Western Europe, South America, Australia, New Zealand, all around the world, being invited by people, local vegan groups, basically, for the most part, in Veg Fest and so forth, to share the vegan message in India and China and all over Southeast Asia and all over Europe and Africa and the Middle East and so forth. And to see this movement is not only growing, but the World Peace Diet, which really brings the spiritual dimension into the movement, is really embraced, especially in Asia. I found, like, in China, in India, Taiwan, Korea, Vietnam, and many other places as well, Australia, lots of Europe. Europe tends to be a little more skittish about the spiritual part for some reason, but for the most part, there's people that are, like you were saying, very interested in the ancient wisdom traditions, that understand that we're not just living in a material universe here, that there's more to life than just this physical reality. And so I think in the last 15 years, there's been kind of a polarization happening, but also a lot of progress is being made. I think now we're in many ways, perhaps, in the birthing process. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I do think veganism is the most important thing in many ways. If we continue to imprison and harm and insist really on force, medicating and abusing billions of animals and impregnating them against their will, stealing their babies, and this massive amount of terrible violence that we're inflicting on these animals, we're sowing the seeds for the same thing to boomerang back on us. That's what we have to understand. The old teaching that whatever you sow, you're going to reap.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really incumbent upon us now, I think, for us and for future generations, to share this message. There's nothing more important we can do, I think, than that.
Absolutely. Well, and you really convey that in the book about how what we do to the animals, it's coming back on us, whether it be the overuse of drugs and medication, the violence, the rape, whatever it may be, that it actually is being reflected through what we're doing. And I'm curious because I actually have been going through in the last few months the realization of how unawake I was during the time that I was not only consuming meat and dairy, but I was wearing leather clothing. I wasn't caring if cosmetics were animal tested. The other day I went to the store and I had to get some, I didn't have to, I chose to get some cosmetics. And I actually had my phone and I was looking up cruelty-free, non-animal tested makeup because I refuse to buy anything that's animal tested. And as I was leaving the store, I said to the clerk, I said, I'd like you to pass a message on to your manager if they could post which makeup is vegan and non-cruelty or cruelty-free. And she said, that's a really great idea. And she was so appreciative of me bringing that up. But I'm curious for the people that, like myself, I'm realizing how disconnected I was. How do we forgive ourselves? What's the process? Because I do feel a deep sorrow for a lot of what I was so unaware of.
Yeah, that's a good question, the forgiveness of ourselves. And I think the underlying idea to remember really is that we're all wounded. But when we're born into this society, from the time we're little infants, it's really not our choice to eat animal foods. That's one of the fundamental things to really, I think, appreciate and understand, is that the only reason anyone really eats animal-based foods is because they're following orders. We're as little infants, we're vulnerable, and we naturally completely trust these giants, around us, our mother and father and friends, neighbors, relatives, all these people. Without them, we would just die. So at a very deep level, we're vulnerable, and across all species, the most important teaching that comes from the parents to the offspring is about food. Eat this, don't eat this. I remember watching some ducks in Switzerland, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is what it's all about. And she's teaching her little kids, eat this, don't eat this. And so we take that very seriously. So of course, if we're born into families and traditions and church, whatever it is, traditions of eating meat, dairy products, and eggs, we're going to incorporate that, and we're going to be doing that. And it's not something that we have to blame ourselves for. It's simply the result of being born and raised into a society that's been practicing animal agriculture for 10,000 years. So I think the most important thing is to understand that, and to be understanding of that for other people too, because a lot of times as vegans, I know I went through this stage. I want to just shake everyone until they go vegan. I just want to keep shaking them until they finally go vegan. And I think the whole idea here is to realize that we're wounded, and so instead of trying to change people directly, the idea is to plant seeds based on our understanding, and to see ourselves as healers rather than as having to try to force other people to see things our way, because that just sets up a lot of division, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I know when the shutdown started happening, you probably weren't able to go out and speak like you had been prior to that. Where do you see things going in the future as far as being able to travel and speak to groups so that you can share the message as you have in the past?
Well, we were able recently to go for about 4 months to Florida.
Hmm.
We were based in California, and we did some lectures there. In fact, there's a wonderful place in Florida called the Hippocrates Health Institute, which is one of the premier healing centers, I think, really in the world for using organic, whole plant-based foods, primarily raw. And people come from all over the United States. Typically, they come from all over the world with cancer and heart disease and obesity and other diabetes and other issues. So we were there for 2 months, and I was giving lectures, like 3 lectures a week, and plus a concert of original piano music. And my wife Madeline and we were both there. So we gave lectures there, and also Florida was a little more open. So there were some veg fests happening. I spoke at some veg fests and for some communities, vegan groups in Florida. So I'm hoping, that we'll be able to. Site will be able to open up again before too long, and we'll be able to travel and do lectures. There's actually a really wonderful guy we met who's living like we have a little tiny van when we travel. Sometimes we just live in that. We converted it, and he has converted a little Tesla car. He and his wife live in that, and they're putting on veg fests all over Florida and the southeast, in Virginia, North Carolina, and so forth, and has invited me to speak at all of those, starting in October and going all the way through March. So
that's wonderful.
There's people trying to do things, and we're hoping that'll happen. In the meantime, it's like this: we're doing a lot of things online.
Right. And I know you're a very accomplished musician, and so you're a writer, a musician, a speaker. Is there anything you can't do? And I guess it's being vegan that allows you to do that. But yeah, I do know that you're an accomplished musician. And now, do you play your music at the talks that you do?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was really especially prominent when I was in China, for example, or in Taiwan. Some of these other cultures, they love the piano music, and India also, and in some places in the United States and Europe too. And I think it is good because, words are always there's always with words a way to filter that and argue with it internally as we're listening and so forth. But music, you can't argue with a D minor chord. It's just a feeling, and it's a inspirational kind of way of communicating, and it really brings people together, and I think connects us more deeply with our intuition. And I think really what veganism is about, ultimately, is about our intuition, about this feminine wisdom we have within us that's suppressed in our society, that's based on connecting, on caring, on looking deeply. And music, I think, especially if it comes from a deep level, can really open up our connection with our intuition, and also help create more of a sense of harmony within the whole group of people, like in a concert hall, in a lecture hall. So yeah, I think it's great to play music, and my wife is an artist, so we very often have her paintings up. She's a visionary artist from Switzerland, so her paintings of animals, and then that's usually in the background. And quite often she'll join me also. She plays the silver flute when we play concerts.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. So again, I want to remind people that you're listening to the Plant-Based Eating for Health show with Kathleen Gage. And my guest today is Dr. Will Tuttle. He's the author of The World Peace Diet, Eating for Spiritual Health and Social Harmony. And I encourage everybody, pick up a copy. This is a life-changing book, I guarantee you. And there are times where you'll have to put the book down because it's so intense. When I was reading through the chapter on the factory farm workers, I never really looked at it from that perspective. And I had a new level of empathy and appreciation for what these people are subjected to, that maybe by people choosing to give up meat and dairy, we can help heal that side of the equation, which really leads into my next question about what's going on right now with all the violence in the world, with the anger, the anxiety, the fear, due to the shutdown, due to the pandemic. How much do you think the fact that people are choosing to continue to consume animal-based products has to do with all the underlying causes that are causing complications for the pandemic. And what can people do quite seriously to protect their energy around, one, if they do get the virus, that they don't have complications?
Yeah, those are great questions. I think um, first of all, as I talk about in the World Peace Diet, there's basically trauma at every dimension of animal agriculture. The animals themselves, of course, are traumatized by being hyper confined, terrorized, either chronic or acute pain and fear is just their life from the time they're born until they're killed. And so we're eating that, right? I mean, we're eating fear, we're eating trauma, we're eating pain, we're giving that to our children. We live in a society that's basically materialistic. We pretend that the level of energy doesn't exist, but it does exist. It's very important, I think. So I think this is one of the key dimensions of the violence we're seeing in our society. When I was in China, there's an old ancient saying apparently in China that is, if you want to know why there are wars in the world, then listen to the screams of the animals from the slaughterhouse at night. That's an old saying, goes back hundreds of years. Pythagoras, in the West said the same thing. He said, "Is have universal peace as long as we're killing animals for food." That basic idea. And so I think we're seeing right now a playing out of the violence towards animals, and we're seeing it in the divisions that we see in our society between people of all different ways that we figure out how to divide each other, ourselves from each other. And a lot of it is really being, I think, fanned. The flames are being fanned by the mass media. Of course, it's important to understand one thing that I've learned as a vegan activist for 40 years, actually, 41 years, is that one of our most committed, probably the most committed enemy in terms of industries to veganism is the pharmaceutical industry. There's literally over 10,000 different drugs and hormones that are administered to these animals. So the pharmaceutical industry does not want people to be like me, to be vegan. I have not been to a drugstore in 45 years. I haven't needed to go there for anything. And so I think what we have to understand is that the pharmaceutical industry is very powerful in terms of media. They control the media through purchasing. Whoever the advertisers are, you do not want to run any news stories that will make them upset. In fact, you want to run news stories that will help them sell their products. And so when you have people who are sick, then you have the pharmaceutical industry making a lot of money. So not only does the pharmaceutical industry make a lot of money on drugs for the animals, but then people eat meat, dairy products, and eggs, and they get diabetes and liver disease and kidney disease and osteoporosis, and they want people eating animal foods. They test everything on animals. I mean, the vivisection is horrible cruelty to animals. So they're testing all this stuff. People eat the drugs. A lot of these drugs, and the biggest actually profit maker for the pharmaceutical industry are drugs for the very things we're inflicting on animals: stress, terror, fear, despair, insomnia, all these things. We inflict that on animals. And so when you create more fear, more division, more stress, you're going to sell a lot more drugs.
Absolutely.
And so you own the media, right? You can fan the flames of terror and division and make people need more drugs. And the Americans buy more drugs per capita than any country in the world by far. The mainstream media, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the BBC, the NBC, CBS, CNN, all of those, the NPR, I mean, they're all funded by the same people, by these huge
that is so incredible
on this whole thing. So we have to not let ourselves be just manipulated by all this stuff. And
Well, we could talk on this for days because it's so apparent once we start really looking at it how connected all of that is. And yet when you explain it to somebody, they look at you like, oh yeah, right, you're just being a conspiracy theorist. And it's like, no, no, no. Every morning when I get up, I usually, like this morning, I got up at 4 and I do my yoga, I do my meditation, I do my journaling. And so my yoga, I get off of YouTube, and I turned on the TV and whatever channel was on. And the first thing no, actually, I think it was when I went to YouTube, they had a commercial for diabetes medicine. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if they said, okay, you've got diabetes. Here's your two choices. You can change your diet and you can reverse your diabetes, because I have a lot of friends and people who are in my groups that they have reversed their diseases. Or you can take this medicine that's going to give you so many complications, and you can continue to eat and with unconsciousness, and you can gain the weight and you can feel sluggish and you can be a couch potato, and on and on. And it's like people in many ways don't want to know the truth. So how do we, I know you said, we live by example and you can't force it on people, because when you first went vegan, it was like you wanted to shake people into being vegan. And I have felt the same way, but I realized it's through education, it's through awareness, it's through living a vibrant life. Like I went on a 3-mile run this morning to prepare for our conversation, because I wanted to, it's a run of gratitude. It's like, I'm so grateful I get to meet someone like yourself who's doing such amazing things. So how do we educate people besides writing the books, besides doing this? What else can we do?
Yeah, I think I'm a big believer really in the power of the individual to transform the world through self-transformation. So I think the main focus really of our activism should be looking at how we can embody this message more congruently. Because if we're not congruent, people will feel it, and we won't be as effective, I don't think, in bringing the message to people. So it's really important. I love what you said, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and doing the inner work, doing your yoga, your meditation, running, letting your body celebrate. This is the key thing. This is the most important thing. And out of that, we get our guidance. What is mine uniquely to do? Am I here to share this message through interviewing people, through creating education online? Or am I here to educate people and help raise awareness through being a musician or an artist or a chef or a cook, or through the legal system, through politics? I mean, we all have our unique skills and talents and abilities. But I think the main problem is that most of us live in a society, we all live in a society really, where we're not encouraged to do any introspection really. We're so busy all the time. We're trying to survive and struggle and just make ends meet and so forth. So to really take time to do the introspection work, to listen deeply every morning. I mean, I always take an hour every morning and just sit and don't do anything and listen and question more and more deeply, what is this being? Because the underlying problem with all of us, what animal agriculture does is it manipulates us falsely into seeing animals as merely pieces of flesh, just things, objects, commodities. We buy and sell them by the pound. So that habit of seeing a being as a thing doesn't stop there with animals. It goes right, we start to see each other that way, right? We start to see other human beings as just objects that we can manipulate to get what we want. And pretty soon we see ourselves that way. I want to manipulate my own image. I want to make a good resume that I can sell. I want to sell myself. I become divorced really from myself, to realize that what I am essentially is not just a physical body. What an animal is essentially is not just a physical body.
Right.
There's a being, consciousness, awareness, to look into their eyes and honor that and see that in them. But we can't do that if we haven't done that with ourselves. If we haven't been able to look and see the being that we are, which is eternal, which is what makes this physical body possible. And to connect with that, and we cannot connect with that through watching TV and going to work and those things. That needs us to connect in silence, with nature, with creativity, with the beauty of life, the beauty of nature, to really stop the world outside of us a little bit. Stop all that. Stop the internal world also, and just be open and listen. I think out of that comes a tremendous reservoir of wisdom and power. If our movement, the vegan movement, would begin to really act in this way, instead of just always trying to change other people, and they always resist, and we end up fighting all the time, right? And trying to get them to be like us, but to really bring ourselves into a deeper lived experience of what veganism is. Because what is veganism? It's love. That's what it is. It's another word for love. It's just simply true, authentically caring and having kindness and respect for the other expressions of life. That's what it is. So to actually live that, to actually go around in my life experience embodying that, that's not easy. I mean, that's a big job. To actually be a vegan, to do it to cows and pigs and chickens is a lot easier than to doing it to other human beings.
True. So I'm curious. A couple of things that I want to point out for people in the World Peace Diet. You've got to get this book. I mean, I don't know how more proactive I can be about encouraging people to get this book. It will change your life. I promise you that. And I have not been this taken with a book in quite some time. And I read a lot of books. I'm an avid reader, and I watch a lot of YouTube videos on the topic of veganism and plant-based eating. But one of the things that you really emphasize in the book is how disconnected people are with the food that they eat, that they actually have to shut down their emotions. They can say they're spiritual, they can say they care about animals. And I've worked a lot in the pet industry, and it's so interesting that there are so many people in the pet industry who love dogs and cats, but they will eat other types of animals. And I had that awareness of like, oh my gosh. And the last conference that I spoke at, I actually asked the meeting planner to make sure that there were plant-based options for me. And so they made half the buffet plant-based. And they said they got the highest reviews at that conference on food than any of the conferences. And she goes, from this point forward, we're always going to offer at least 50% of the choices to be plant-based. But how would you recommend for somebody who is in a situation where they are vegan, they're very committed to it, but family members are not, and family members might even criticize them for their choices? What would you recommend that people do to, one, be able to emotionally be able to protect themselves with that kind of energy, but also to not take it personally?
Right. Well, I think you said it very well at the very end. Not take it personally. Because basically we would like our family to have the same values, and eating animal foods and being vegan, they're like very antagonistic energies there. So one of the things I guess that I've found over the years is to have patience, in a sense. I mean, I wanted my mother, my sister, my brother. My father passed away. He wasn't that old, so he wasn't in the picture that. But them especially, and I remember, working for years. Sending them links to videos and talking to them on the phone. And when we would visit, I would always, make vegan foods or encourage them and so forth. And it went up and down for quite a while. But at one point, I remember, like my sister, for example, and she was a fundamentalist Christian and was very, her church group, they were big into eating meat. And at one point, she slammed the door and she said, "Oh, you vegans are so judgmental, and it's difficult, But at one point, she sent me an email, and she said, "Will, I want you to know that the Lord came to me and told me to go vegan." And it was such a great moment, because I realized that essentially, the teachings of veganism are totally in harmony with all the world religions. And it's just a matter of being persistent and not, again, trying to change the other person, but just keep planting seeds. In other words, I don't want to say that we don't have any power to change other people, we don't. It's just not a good idea to try to change them directly,
Hmm.
because if they have a feeling like if someone entered my life and I could feel they were just trying to change me all the time, I would be fighting back. That's a healthy response. When someone's trying to change you, you want to, like, come on. And so instead of trying to change them, try to change myself. That's the one person I can change. And then people will feel that. And that's the great irony. I was saying it before. The most powerful way to change other people is to change ourselves and let go. All the world religions, like the Bhagavad Gita, one of the main messages is in the Bhagavad Gita is, don't be attached to the fruit of your actions, right? Just do the right thing and then let it go. So what I found is, just say this message, using I statements. For example, don't say you would be healthier if you did this, and you would be happier. Don't use you. Say I. I'm so happy that I discovered that the only reason I was eating animal foods all those years that I was doing it was I was just following orders. And now I realize it wasn't a good idea. I'm not doing it anymore. It's fantastic. And then just let go. Don't say anything more. Just plant that seed that I discovered, and it's great, and I'm not doing it, and it's fantastic. And just be positive and let go. And you've just planted a seed that will go deep into that person's consciousness, because it's true for them. That's true for everyone. Everyone knows that's true. The only reason anyone eats animal foods is because they're just following orders. I've given lectures in the hills of Iowa to a bunch of farmers, and they all said, yeah, that's true. We all know. We're just doing it because we're following orders. Our parents did it, everybody. So when we say that, that's it. That's true. And I discovered it wasn't in my best interest. I'm not doing it anymore, and it's great. You've just planted a seed that person's own wisdom and compassion will begin to water that seed gradually, and that seed will grow and sprout, and pretty soon, at some point, they'll probably go vegan because you planted that seed. They may forget. If you do it well, they'll forget you. They won't even know you did it, right? But just plant the seed with love and respect, share our story, tell our own story, and I think that way we plant seeds that really work, and we can help to create a vegan world with our friends, family, and even those people that are difficult.
I love that. That's beautiful.
The thing is, don't feel that you have to
Hmm.
change people that are close to you, because that's very often the hardest. They're the ones that are going to resist the most for whatever reason. So, but there's a lot of other people, as you've discovered, out there in the world who are open, and work
Right.
and share with those people, and you'll feel a lot more progress, because some people just get bitter, and they think, oh man, my husband won't change, and my kids won't change, whatever it is, so I'm going to give up. But don't. It's good to remember there's a lot of other people who are more open to this message and work on being an example and sharing with those people.
Absolutely. So that's wonderful insight. And how do people get in touch with you, Dr. Tuttle? What's the best way, your web address or whatever social?
Yeah, the best way for people to get in touch with me is through the website that we have, which is worldpeacediet.com. And if they just remember my name, Will Tuttle, that's good too, willtuttle.com. Either one of those goes to the same place. So either willtuttle.com or worldpeacediet.com. And we have there quite a lot of resources for people. We have videos of lectures, of Madeline's intuitive vegan cooking, of our garden, of concert music, all these different things. There's articles that I've been writing as well if you want to get more. We also have a training, the World Peace Diet Facilitator Training and the World Peace Diet Mastery Training, if you want to go deeper with these ideas and become a World Peace Diet Facilitator and coach and maybe help other people. Well, we've had a lot of people go through that and really like that experience. And we have our schedule of upcoming events on Zoom or on, physically if we go somewhere. So we'd love to stay in touch with people and just work together to help bring the vegan message.
Wonderful. We'll make sure that's in the show notes. And in closing, what are your final thoughts for people as they go out into the world and they're considering this as a way of life? Because there's the confusion of, I'm on a vegan diet, and it's not a diet, it's a way of life. Plant-based could be a diet, but this is truly a philosophy, a way of life, a love for the animals, the environment, for other people. So what would you give people as your closing thoughts?
I would just, as my closing thoughts, I would re-emphasize what you just said, that this is a way of living. It's a very positive way of living. To every morning, take a moment as you enter into the world. Perhaps you leave the world of sleeping and you wake up, and just give thanks for another day that you have to learn, to grow, to contribute to the healing of our world, and to awaken more fully and completely yourself, and to be part of a positive movement that's happening on this earth that's vital right now. It's very important that we have a very profound meaning in our life, that we can help liberate animals and we can liberate ourselves and humanity, really, because everything is interconnected. So I think this idea that we live in a beautiful earth, a beautiful and abundant planet, there's no reason for us to have environmental devastation and disease and war and conflict. It's not necessary. We're not flawed. It's just that we have, as a humanity, as a society, we've inherited an obsolete food system. Eating animal-based foods basically is the number one thing that's destroying the outer world, our environment, water and air and soil and rainforests and climate and all that stuff, and also causing so much division in our society. So by showing compassion and kindness to animals ourselves, and then just sharing this as best we can, we're part of the solution. So we can give thanks for that. And remember, our life does not go on forever, right? We're here just for a few relatively short years. So to make the best of our time here. Don't fritter away our time. Just use our time as best we can to become better people, and to share this message and to live this message. And when we do that, we will have lived a life really worth living. And I think that no one else can do that for us. That's something each one of us is really called to do in our own unique way. So it's really wonderful to meet you, Kathleen. I can
Thank
see
you.
that you're radiating the same spirit, and that's the essential thing. And to encourage each other on this great adventure of a human life, and to liberate animals. That's really what's on our plate right now.
Thank you so much. This has been such an honor, Dr. Tuttle. I am so thrilled that I've been able to bring your message to my community. And again, I encourage everybody, please pick up your own copy of The World Peace Diet. Give books out as a gift. Find people that you feel would really benefit from this, and start book study groups. You can go on Clubhouse. You can start groups. I'm actually planning to do that with your book, is have discussions on it, because it's so powerful, and you are just such a gift to the world. So thank you very much. This has been an honor. This is Kathleen Gage and Dr. Will Tuttle with Plant-Based Eating for Health. Please go out, be conscious about what you put on the end of your fork. Have a great day.
Thank you for your commitment to an ethical life through plant-based food choices. The kind of choices that are kind to your body, the environment, and most of all, animals. Be sure to leave a review and rating of the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show.